Now, I for one hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we have to be strong. It has to be discussed. If you haven't been aware, there's been this huge discussion around EMIYA Alter's name. All of a sudden his name started trending, and the reason why is because of what happened in the latest chapter, the Seraph chapter. You guys know that we just did the EMIYA Alter video here on the channel, so you can just imagine my surprise when that's the chapter that comes out afterwards. So we're going to get into that. As it turns out, EMIYA Alter, on top of everything that we laid out in the other video, EMIYA Alter took the life of Taiga as well. The manga panels pretty much confirm it. You can even see by the end of the chapter that she ended up pointing the gun at him. And I do have some translation notes for the chapter. So what happens in the notes is that Taiga's son ended up getting a disease that couldn't be cured. And while normally she wouldn't opt for this decision, it can be said that there was really nobody else around her. Considering the path that EMIYA took, it left her on her own with just her and her child. Turns out Kiara was hosting this part of her sect that had the best medical opportunities that she could find. All she had to do was follow into the sect. Now, if you're not familiar with Kiara's background, the whole point of this Buddhist sect is it was more so of a cult where they all worship Kiara, and she just used the people that followed her basically as fornication slaves. That's pretty much the overall of her character and how she became a beast to begin with. She is inherently a corrupted being, and by extension of her influence, she had got a hold of Taiga at her lowest point. Taiga ends up going to the sect to get her son help, and this just so happens to come at the same time that EMIYA Alter was going to take down Kiara, because he knew how corrupted Kiara actually was. Not everybody was in the know. Eventually they formed a resistance against EMIYA Alter, and Taiga ended up being a part of that resistance in order to protect her son, which leads into the scene where she pointed the gun at EMIYA. Absolutely tragic situation for multiple reasons. I'm seeing a great divide in the community on who they should point the finger at. Most people are pointing it at Kiara for the very fact that she believes that her intervention is inconsequential. Like, Kiara doesn't care what happens to her subjects, the people of her cult. The only thing that mattered to her, and she's admitted this in the story, and this goes along with everything that Hans had built up throughout Fate Extra CCC, she just wanted to get hers off, and she took enjoyment in the process of doing so. She's really a true masochist. So a lot of people are pointing it at her. Some people are pointing it at Kirisugu for putting these ideals into Shiro's head from the very beginning, and then a lot of people are pointing the finger at Shiro for committing the acts altogether. Again, just because EMIYA had to do the process doesn't make him any less guilty. It's just like Kirisugu, and regardless of what it stood for, it doesn't change the fact that he's a compulsive assassin. He just goes around taking down everybody. You see people empathize with EMIYA Alter more so than Taiga. It's like, wow, I could have sworn that Taiga was the one on the other side of the bullet. And like I always say, if it was your loved one on the other side of the bullet, you wouldn't be singing the same song. So I don't feel bad for him because of that. I do feel bad because Shiro is always in these life-altering grand decisions. Even going back to Sakura, he was posed with the idea that, hey, you gotta gut one of your best friends, or this is what's gonna happen to the world. At least with EMIYA, it's not nearly as tragic because EMIYA chose to do what he did. Nobody forced him to do that. But with EMIYA Alter, it was a matter of black and white, and that led him into becoming his father, which to him at the time, you know, becoming the guy that literally saved your life doesn't sound too bad. But he would soon realize that wasn't the case. The path that led Shiro to making this decision, and this is going by my own video, is this mind of steel concept, where at 17 years old, he had to make the decision decision to take the life of somebody dear to him without any real information to back it up. There was a lot of hints, there was a lot of abnormalities, but Shiro himself never actually saw anything up until a certain point in time. He just had to take the events that were going on in stride and just believe what everybody else was saying. In actuality, the only thing that he knows about Sakura is, hey, she showed up on my porch and she's never done anybody wrong. Like it was mentioned in the Mind of Steel ending, he took out everybody. The ending posed the fact that him going down this path, he took out Rin, EMIYA, Zoken, Sakura, and now even Taiga. So subscribing to this Kurisugu mindset, this man got rid of everybody in his life that he's ever known. And that is the most unfortunate part about it, because it all started with that one decision. The one that he made to take down Taiga would also ultimately leave her son to die because he had the disease, and without Taiga supporting him, there was no way for him to live. But there was also no way that EMIYA Alter could allow her to benefit from this corruption, especially when she doesn't know. It was merely just Kiara, like everybody else, taking advantage of her low position. You gotta think how low and desperate of a position Taiga has to be in. And it really stands to reason why Taiga is so happy and giddy all the time. Man, people forget that Taiga's grandfather is a mafia boss. The man is a literal Yakuza leader. You had the Einsburn consultation room, so Taiga has probably seen some shit, and it's likely that she sees it often. Without Shiro in her life, because he upped and went on his journey, he's out the picture. No Shiro means no Sakura and Rin, because he's the reason that they came. No EMIYA, and Kurisugu passed away because of the Magecraft. She's all alone, and it reminds me of a scene in UB-Dub that makes it that much more devastating that it had to happen this way. If you remember in UB-Dub, there's an anime only scene where Taiga actually goes to Kurisugu's grave and she starts to tell him about everything that's been going on with Shiro, because despite what everybody else thought, she saw the good side of Kurisugu, a lot like Irisville. She's talking to his grave and she's just so excited to tell him how Shiro is, you know, finally starting to develop as a man. He's bringing these women over, he's going on dates. You can tell that she really had a lot of respect for that man. And now the position has flipped to a point where EMIYA Alter now has to point the gun at what is essentially his foster mother or his big sister, however you want to look at it. But the closest thing to him having this motherly guardian since he lost his real family. And just like I said in the EMIYA Alter video where I talked about the scene of him pulling the knife on Sakura being very similar to Kurisugu taking out his own father, it's the exact same thing. EMIYA Alter taking out Taiga is just like Kurisugu taking out Natalia. All these scenes directly line up with each other. Like, the parallels are crazy. And this was something that was foreshadowed in his character lines when he spoke about Taiga in FGO. He mentions her and her child, but he really doesn't have anything to say, as if to say he had a run-in with them and he's extremely regretful of that situation. His suffering knows no end. This is by far the worst version. I don't think it gets any lower than this, and it's the reason why I could never subscribe to the idea of Shiro being with Sakura, because in any scenario where he deals with her, it just ends up bad. Like, think about it. The best case scenario where he deals with Sakura, the man literally loses his body and ends up in a puppet. That's his best case scenario. The other two cases being that he dies altogether, or as we can clearly see, turns into EMIYA Alter. And that's not to say that Sakura doesn't deserve to be loved, but look at the cost. That in and of itself is also unfortunate. He really knows how to make it come around full circle. I'll give him that.